50 years ago today, Darwin families gathered around their TVs to watch a brand new station go to air. From Channel 8 to 9, over the decades we've shared plenty of laughs and a few tears as well. To celebrate our golden anniversary, Amy Clements takes us on a trip down memory lane.
In 1971, the promise of commercial television in Darwin made headlines, and on November 11th, Territory Television broadcast for the first time. Cyclone Tracy destroyed the station in 1974. 10 months later, broadcasting resumed, this time in colour.
Hello and thank you for joining us here on 1330 on this lovely Wednesday afternoon.
Old favourite local productions included The Darwin Gardener, The Grapevine and a show with a cult following.
Good evening, welcome once again to Sports Scene 85.
But it's always been our commitment to local news that has set us apart. From 8 News in the 80s and 90s.
With the experience to cover Darwin and the Territory like no one else.
To 9 Darwin in the early 2000s. Our news service is now in its 40th year.
It's launched the careers of the likes of Alison Langdon, Charles Croucher, Alan Rascal down in Melbourne. I think someone who deserves special recognition on this big anniversary is Andy Bruin. Andy started at Channel 8 as a young budding journalist. He ended up becoming news director and then went on to become general manager.
Lindy Chamberlain was convicted 10 days after our first bulletin. We were there for that, then her release and pardon.
I covered the 4th coronial of Azaria Chamberlain when they finally said that a dingo did take her, and that was 40 years after my father had actually covered it.
Then came the manhunt for serial murderer Joseph Schwab in 1987, dubbed the Kimberley Killer.
Whether it takes a week or whether it takes 6 months, but we're determined we'll catch him.
And one of the biggest stories of the 21st century, the murder of British backpacker Peter Falconio. His killer, Bradley John Murdoch, sentenced to life imprisonment.
Through celebrations, commiserations, so many people have told such important stories in Australia's history, in the Territory's history, in Darwin's history.
Good evening. Authorities have called off the search for the crocodile which killed 11-year-old Bryony Goodsell.
The amazing thing about Darwin is so close to Asia and being in so many ways the first on the ground for some of those stories, be them drug smugglers in Bali, natural disasters.
And in 2002, our geographical location saw more than 60 victims of the Bali bombings evacuated to Darwin for treatment. 8 years later, the city itself was rocked by an explosion.
A man pushed a shopping trolley loaded with 3 jerry cans full of petrol and fireworks through the front door of the TIO office.
Over the years, we've rolled out the red carpet for some important figures. The Pope visited Darwin in 1986, some overwhelmed by the heat and holiness.
Guide all of you, the people of Darwin.
And in 2011, the President of the United States.
The day that Barack Obama touched down, I was at the airport and saw Air Force One coming in.
Then there's the politics, whether it's a midnight coup.
It is immature politics.
Or a press conference that turns into a citizen's arrest.
Politics in the Territory is always very interesting, that's for sure.
From Cracker Night to the beer can regatta to the plain weird and wacky.
Bro, what have you been doing? Where have you been? I've been eating snails and...
It's been our absolute pleasure to tell stories Territory style.
There aren't many places you can get away with running Santa news breaks, but we did in Darwin. Good evening. Some important breaking news to report right now. Darwin air traffic controllers have just approved Santa to enter Territory airspace. 9 News has been told it's important that Darwin boys and girls go to bed now.
After 50 years on air, there's only one thing left to say. We still love you, Darwin.
We haven't ever left here. It was a very big day a year ago when we got the bulletin back as it is now.
Darwin is just a one of a kind. There's nothing else like it.
Without the loyalty of Darwin viewers, this anniversary probably would never have happened.
There's no place I'd rather be. Love you, Darwin.
Amy Clements, 9 News.